I am Karis Samuelson and I am Associate Director at Akuta Group of Companies.
I am Harriet Knowlton. I'm an interior designer at Akuta Group of Companies.
I've worked at the Akuta Group for 8 years. So my role, I'm business development. So I work with the client. I bridge the gap between the client and the designer.
I have worked at Akuta for 7 years, started as an intern and worked my way up, so now senior designer. I work predominantly with Karis for A.LONDON projects, to show homes and private clients. I love colour and I love texture and layering things, so I think subconsciously I pick things up as I go along, and I'm always taking photos of things, and then a picture will come along or a project will come along and I'll think of that place in Morocco, and it might not be so exact, but I know that that's kind of roughly what's inspired me. Building someone's home or a space you want to make feel like a home, for it to be layered and feel like it's got history to it and it's not just been put there just for the sake of a shelf and it needs a book.
We really try to take into account the local area. I think that's really important. Because I think most people who buy in London, they're aspiring. If you buy in St John's Wood, you buy in Mayfair, it's aspirational and you're going for a certain look and aesthetic. So we do try and rope that in somehow, some way. It's great for entertaining. You have the penthouse terraces, which obviously, incredible with the sweeping views, and the closeness to Lord's is quite iconic, so I think that probably plays into it. I would say entertainment, young families potentially, because again, great open spaces, the parks behind us, the zoo, great location.
Essentially, once we know who the buyer is, that's how we can design the pieces, because we know the kind of person that's going to be here. So I think that is really important, to figure out who's going to be buying it and then start looking at the scheme. But naturally they come hand in hand, because you've got like these amazing views, the windows, and we didn't want to walk in the space and you've got all these big bulky pieces that kind of block that. I think that used to be a thing where you try and focus on the furniture pieces themselves, because that's what we're designing, but actually to sell the apartment you kind of want to sell everything, and like the views here are one of the the biggest selling points.
You want it to complement, not detract from, and I think so, it's a fine balance of not taking over, not having like dominant pieces of furniture, but at the same time selling a really beautiful aesthetic, which is functional too. I think we nail that every time, if I say so myself.
So with the theme, I think it's with the colours. It's all very tonal and earthy colours, and even with the textures. So in here we've got an armchair that's in a boucle fabric, which has got nice texture to it. The cushions in some of the bedrooms have a really nice texture to them. So just layering up the colours and the textures so that it works throughout each room. Well, I think bringing the outdoors in, so with the colours, having nice earthy colours in the sofas, the leaves, like incorporating all of the colour scheme throughout. With the outdoors, it's nice because it allows it to flow, and you're not just looking at this and it's completely different. It has like a bit of a flow throughout. It blends in nicely. I do think like the second you walk in, it does have a warm feel to it, whether that's just like the colours and the textures that have been used. Like warm is one, but also fresh.
Yeah, I would say so, because there's a lot of outside in, especially here. Lots of greenery outside, so I think you've done a fantastic job in incorporating that. And also on a grey day, like you get often in London, at least there's pops of colour and vibrancy that really lift the place, I think. Well done.
So what have we got? We've got warm, fresh. We need one more.
I would say contemporary.
Contemporary, we can go contemporary. This apartment, when you walk in and you have that view, I feel like I could be in the countryside, despite the fact that we are central London.
Yeah, I think the beauty of this development would be that it's obviously exclusive, it's prime location, but it's very accessible as well. It doesn't feel austere. There's nothing about it that appears intimidating. It would be such a lovely place to live, I think. If you walk in here, you want to live here. And the furniture, as well as the location, the high spec, as you're saying, the finish of the apartments, I think they all just tie in together. And I think the location is quite unique in that it is in the centre of London, just outside the centre of London, but it's very villagey, it's very neighbourhood. So anybody that moves here is buying into the character of St John's Wood, not just, oh, this is a nice penthouse that has a great view. You want to live here, you're close to all the open spaces, you're close to the high street, you're not that far from Oxford Street, so, it's prime location, and I think we took that into account as well. Whoever lives here will be extremely discerning, and they'll value the quality that we put into the scheme. When you look at other developments and you go into other penthouses, you already know what you're going to see when you walk in through the door. It's quite typical. I think what's really beautiful about these schemes is that they are potentially more sophisticated and elegant whilst being contemporary without the blinged out factor, as you'd mentioned. So it's interesting. It's not what you would expect, and it's taken a little bit more consideration.